The Nigerian Revenue Service is currently still issuing tax identification number, but they are trying to ensure that maybe when everything must have been implemented, then your CAC number should serve as your tax identification number. Then you are also advised to maintain proper records of the income and expenses that accrue to you in the course of your personal life or in the course of your business. So for businesses, you are advised to use accounting softwares to be able to do the proper classification of a transaction that happened in your business. Then it's also important that you keep track of invoices and receipts. Right. So if you incur any expenses or you make any transaction, it's important that you keep track of or you keep record, you file your invoice or the receipts that is given to you by the vendor, right? Because the tax authority does not actually listen to your claims like that's a just amount, even though they can see it in your bank statement, but they usually prefer you presenting a document that will substantiate that particular expenses, right? Then you're also advised to mark deadlines for tax filing on your calendar. Right? So you mark important tax filing dates, like the 10th of the following month for filing of your personal income tax or payee, and 21st of the following month for your value added tax and withholding tax. Then 6 months after accounting year, after the end of the financial year for company income tax. So when you mark these important dates in your calendar, it will enable you to remember the filing dates and ensure that you do not miss the deadline. Then it's also important that you do the filing as that when due, right? So it's not just marking the dates in your calendar, but also ensuring that you do the filing when you're supposed to do it. Then another major important issue or major important thing you need to do is to engage the service of a tax professional. This is because navigating tax compliance can be a challenging task, right? But because the tax consultants or the tax experts have actually done this over the years and have actually have a number of clients that they're handling, right? And because they are subject matter experts, they should be able to navigate it more easier than you doing the whole thing yourself. Then for large taxpayers, it's important that you ensure that you register or you integrate your system with the Nigerian Revenue Service portal, right? In such a way that they can be monitoring your transactions and your invoices as of when they happen. This is actually mandatory for all large taxpayers, right? So it's important to engage the service of a service integrator and also access points providers to integrate your ERPs and your accounting systems with the Nigerian Revenue Service systems. Then it's also important that you look out for updates in tax regulation. Just recently, the Nigerian Revenue Service made an update on withholding tax, where they stated that profits on short-term securities are going to be subject to withholding tax, right? So it's important we pay attention to the changes that happen over time, right? Because if you don't pay attention, you might just be carrying out your transaction like you normally do, right? So, for instance, you just be carrying out your transaction like you normally do, but because you listen to news and pay attention to the updates, it will enable you to make some decision that you will not normally do if you do not have access to the news that happens. Then, in conclusion, it's important that you take note of these important changes, right? For companies, if you're a company or if you're running a company, then if you're running a small company, then you are not allowed to pay tax. Now you are completely exempted from paying company income tax. But for large companies, you are going to be paying 30% of your accessible profits as a tax. Then you're also mandated to pay 4% development levy, right? But if you are a multinational, then after all your taxes, there has to be like a minimum tax you are supposed to pay. So at the end of the day, they have to make a comparison of the tax you've paid with the minimum effective tax rate of 15%, right? Then if you're an individual, it's important that you look up for the tax band that you fall into, which is between 0% and 25%. So you take note of the tax band that you fall into and pay your tax